But the loadUser function makes the API call which needs the access token. One way to do it would be to simply pass the token as a parameter, but then we'll end up in a situation where we'll always need to pass this around every time we need to make an authenticated request. We'll start by creating a new app using Expo. We'll do npx create expo app and I'll name it mastering auth. Let's open this in VS Code, open the terminal, and npm install the React Navigation Native and React Navigation Native stack packages, which we'll use to create a stack-based navigator to help us navigate between different screens of our app. Then I'll go and create a screens directory, and inside it a login screen. We'll import the safe area view and text components from React Native, and then we'll do export default function and return the safe area view, and then we'll have text with, say, login. I'll duplicate this component, rename it to home screen, and then rename login to home. Now that we have our screens, we'll open the app.js file, which is our entry point, remove everything inside it, and import the create native stack navigator function, the navigation container, and our two screens, login screen and home screen. We can now create our navigation stack using the create native stack navigator function, and then inside app, we'll wrap everything within the navigation container, add the stack navigator, and inside it we'll have our screens. We'll do stack screen, name login, and then we'll provide a component login screen. Let's duplicate this and rename it to home and home screen. I'll now open the terminal, run npm run start, press I to open the IIS simulator, and since our login screen is the first item in the list, it will be the one rendered when the app opens. Let's go ahead and start working on the login form. I'll add view, text input, and style sheet to our imports. We'll style the safe area view to show on a white background, and then add flex1 to make it stretch over the entire screen. Then we'll wrap the text within a view component, give it some padding, and then style the text with a grayish color and font weight 500. And this will be like our email address label. Then we'll add a text input component and style it with a background color, height 40, give it a bit of margin top, a border, border radius, border color, and a bit of padding. And this will be our form text field. Before adding another one for the password field, let's go ahead and extract a component we can easily reuse. I'll grab all this and do function FormTextField. We'll wrap everything within a view component, paste it in, and then down here we'll use it. Of course, we should be able to customize the label, so we'll pass a label prop, go to the component, accept it, and then if we receive a label, we'll render the text component with the received label prop. Now, the text input component accepts a lot of different props: value, onChange text, keyboard type, and another zillion ones. So what we'll do is use the REST operator to grab all the remaining props, and then forward them to the text input component. So any additional props we pass to the form text field component will be passed down to the text input component. However, one thing I do want to do by default is set autocapitalize to none. Moving on, let's go ahead and extract the styles. We'll go down here and do const styles and use the style sheet create function. We'll have label and we'll copy the label styles, and then text input and copy the input styles. Finally, we'll move the component into its own file. I'll select all this, create a new directory called components with a new FormTextField file, paste everything in, export the component, import the missing components, and then back to our login screen, we'll import the new FormTextField component, remove the unused imports, hit save, and everything should still look the same. Let's duplicate this form text field, rename the label to password, and since this is a password field, I'll also set secure text entry to true. So now if we type in the email, we see the characters, but if we type in the password, the characters are hidden. Let's go ahead and add a row gap of 16 to add some spacing between the fields, and then we'll import the style sheet utility, create a styles object with wrapper and container. We'll then copy the styles from the safe area view. Here we'll have styles wrapper, paste them in, and then do the same with the container. I'll grab them from here, styles container, and paste. Moving on, let's import useState from React, and we'll have one email state variable and another one for password. We'll then set the value for the email field, then on change text, we'll receive the text and call the setEmail function. Another thing we want to do here is set the keyboard type to email address. This will adjust the keyboard layout to make it easier for users to type in their email. We'll then copy these and do the exact same thing for the password field. But here we'll have password and set password. Our fields are ready to go. Let's import the button component from React Native, go down here and add it. We'll do button title login, and then on press we'll call a handle login function, which we don't have yet, so we'll go up here and add it. For now, we'll just console log the values to make sure everything is working. I'll open the terminal, go in the simulator, type in the email and password, press login, and here they are. We'll leave React Native for a moment and go to our Laravel API. The first thing we need to do is jump into the user model and make sure we use the has API tokens trait. This will enhance our user model with all kinds of token-related methods. I'll import it, save, and then go to the API routes file and add a new route for the login endpoint. We'll start by validating the request. We'll have email is required and must be a valid email, password required, and device name also required. We'll use this to name our soon-to-be-created access token. Then we'll try to find the user where email is request email. If we don't find a user, or we find one but the hash check of the request password fails, we'll throw a validation exception with messages for the email field saying the provided credentials are incorrect. If we get past this point, it means the credentials were correct and we can return a response, a JSON response, with token equals to user create token, and we'll use the device name to name it and then call plain text token. Let's now jump back to React Native and we'll install Axios. We'll then import it, go to our handle login function, do a try catch, log out any potential error, and then inside the try block, we'll do await axios, and we'll send a post request to the API endpoint we've just created with the email, password, and device name. Here I will import the platform utility and do a combination of platform OS and platform version. Finally, we'll make sure to ask for a JSON response by setting headers accept to application JSON, and then we'll turn the handle login function into an async one. Let's open the terminal, close this one, go in the simulator, enter some incorrect credentials, hit login, and because we've used incorrect credentials, we receive a 422 validation failed response. I'll go to the error and do E of response data, and if we try again, we can see the actual validation errors. With that in mind, let's go ahead and add another state variable for errors, set its default value to an empty object, and then whenever the handle login function is called, we'll make sure to reset the errors, but when the request fails, we'll check if error response status is 422, and if that's the case, we'll set errors to E response data of errors. What we need to do next is go to our template and pass the individual errors array to our fields. We'll go to email and pass errors equal to errors.email, and we'll do the same for password, errors.password. Now we'll jump into the FormTextField component and accept the new errors prop. Let's set an empty array as default, and then below the text input, we'll map through any potential error messages and display a text component with the error. I'll set the key to error, add styles equal to styles error, and then down here we'll define the error style as color red and margin top 2. Alright, let's test it out. I'll type in some incorrect credentials, press login, and here is our error message. Let's now go back to our login screen, grab the data from the response, log it out, and now if we go in the simulator and enter correct credentials, hit login, here is our access token we can use to make authenticated requests. Meaning we can now use the token to get the user. We'll do const data as user equals axios get http localhost 8000 API/user, and we'll send headers as accept application JSON, and most importantly, the authorization header as bearer plus data.token. Let's log this out, go in the simulator, log in, and here is our user info. What I want to do next is extract a custom access instance to reduce some of the duplication and then create some sort of AuthService that groups all auth-related requests into a single file. Let's start with the custom access instance. I'll create a new directory called utils. Inside it, we'll have an axios.js file. I'll import Axios and then create our custom instance with base URL as localhost 8000/API and headers with accept application JSON. And that's it for now. We'll just export default Axios, go back to our login screen, import the custom Axios instance, and then instead of passing the full endpoint URL, we can just pass the relative path and remove the accept header. We'll do the same for the user request. Pass the relative path and remove the accept header. Let's try it out, and everything is still working. Now let's move on to the AuthService. I'll create a services directory with an AuthService file, and here we'll group all of our auth-related requests. For now, we'll just have a login function that will receive the credentials and another one to load the user. I'll go back to the login screen, import the login and load user functions from the AuthService, copy both the login and the user request, paste them here, And then instead of data, we'll have token and call the login function. And down here, we'll have user and call load user. But the load user function makes the API call which needs the access token. One way to do it would be to simply pass the token as a parameter. But then we'll end up in a situation where we'll always need to pass this around every time we need to make an authenticated request. Plus, we also need a place to handle the logic of storing the token on the user's device. This is why I will make like a token service. In here, we'll have the token, which by default is null. We'll export a function setToken that receives new token as a parameter, and then we'll have another export function getToken. To safely encrypt and store the token on the user's device, we'll install the Expo Secure Store package. We'll import Secure Store, then setToken will update the token with the new token value, and if token is not null, we'll do await Secure Store setItemAsync, which takes a key and the value we want to encrypt and store on the user's device. Otherwise, if token is null, we'll call the Secure Store deleteItemAsync function, which will, remove the token from the device. We'll use this when we implement the Logout functionality. Of course, since we're using await, we'll have to turn this function into an async one. Then the getToken function will check if the current token is not null, and if that's the case, it will simply return it. Otherwise, we'll set token to await Secure Store getItemAsync token and return it. Basically, we're saying if the token is not null, it's already loaded, return it. Otherwise, fetch it from the device. And we'll turn this into an async function as well. Now we can go back to our AuthService. We'll import the custom access instance and the new token functions, and then we'll copy and adjust the login request. We'll remove all these and pass the credentials. And then we'll do await setToken data.token, which will store the token on the user's device. We'll do the same thing for the load user function. Copy the request. Then we'll have const token await getToken, adjust the authorization header, and return the user. With these functions in place, we can go back to our login screen, and we no longer need the token, so I'll remove it. Open the terminal, go in the simulator, log in, and here is our user details. Everything is still working. What we need to do next is make this user available anywhere in our app. To make that possible, we'll create a context. I'll make a context directory, and inside it we'll have an AuthContext.js file. Here we'll simply import create context from React and export default and create a new context. Then we'll go to the app.js file, which is the root of our application. We'll import the AuthContext, the load user function from the AuthService, and the useState and useEffect hooks. Inside the app function, we'll have a user state variable, and then an useEffect with an async function runEffect that will try to get the user by calling the load user function. We'll set it, and if we get an error, we'll just console log failed to load user. And finally, we'll run the effect. So what this is doing is, when the application opens, it tries to load the user using the token stored on the device. Now back to our context, in our template, we'll wrap everything within an AuthContext provider, which will provide the user and the setUser function. So any component further down this tree will be able to access them. Then inside our stack navigator, we can check if we have a user, then render the home screen, otherwise render the login screen. Once I hit save, you'll see the home screen because we indeed have a valid token stored on the device and the user has been successfully loaded from the Laravel API. Moving on, we'll go to our home screen, import useContext from React and the AuthContext. Inside our component, we'll grab the user from the AuthContext, and then in our template, we'll do welcome home, user.name, save, and there we go. Now, depending on the network speed, it might take a while to load the user. So we'll go back to our app.js file, add a status_state variable, which will be loading by default, and then after we try loading the user, we'll set it to idle. Then, if status is loading, we'll return like a splash screen. We'll duplicate the home screen, rename it to splash screen, open it, remove the useContext and AuthContext imports, and we'll just display loading. Of course, you can imagine this to be a much more beautiful loading screen, but this is good enough for what we need. Let's go back to the app.js file. If status is loading, return the splash screen. Let's make sure we import it. And once I hit save and I'll freeze the video for a bit, you can see our loading text. Alright, let's go ahead and implement the logout functionality. I'll go to the home screen, import the button component from React Native, and then down here we'll have button, title logout, and on press we'll call a handle logout function, which of course we need to add. We'll do function handle logout, and then go to our AuthService and add an export async function logout that will get the token and then make an axios post request to /logout with an empty body but with the authorization header included. After the logout request is made, we'll set the token to null. Now, of course, we do not have any API/logout endpoint, so we'll have to add it. I'll jump back to the Laravel API and create a route group for all the routes requiring authentication. We'll do route group, we'll set middleware to auth sanctum, and pass a closure. Then we'll get rid of the middleware, grab the routes, and paste them inside our route group. We'll add a new route for logout, function will receive the request, and then we'll simply do request user current access token delete. Return an empty response, and we're done implementing our logout endpoint. Let's go back to React Native, import the logout function from the AuthService, and call it. Now, we also have to update the mobile app user. We'll get the setUser function from the AuthContext and set it to null after we log out. Let's test it out. I'll hit log out, and since the user is set to null, we are redirected to the login screen. Now, if we enter correct credentials and log in again, nothing happens. That's because if we look to our login screen, we are logging in and we are loading the user, but we are not updating the AuthContext. So let's import useContext from React, and then we'll get the setUser function from useContext, and we also need to import the AuthContext, use it, and then down here, after we load the user, we'll call the setUser function. Now, if we log out, enter correct credentials, log in, the AuthContext user is updated, and we are redirected to the home screen. There's one thing bugging me though. If we look in our AuthService, we pretty much always have to get the token and then send it as an authorization header. But since we're using Axios, we can add a request interceptor to do that automatically. We'll import the getToken function and then do Axios interceptors request use. We'll have a function that receives the request, and here we can get the token, and if it's not null, we can set request headers authorization equals to bearer token, and then finally return the request and turn the function into an async one. With this request interceptor in place, we can go to our AuthService and clean everything up. Remove these headers. We no longer need to manually get the token, so I'll remove this, and then remove the getToken function from the imports. Let's test it out, enter correct credentials, log in, and here we go. Log out, and everything is still working. We have login and logout, let's add a register screen. I'll close all this and then duplicate the login screen and rename it to register screen. I'll open up the app.js file, import the register screen, and then go to our template, duplicate login, change name to create an account and component to register screen. Then we'll go to our login screen, and every screen receives a navigation prop, and then down in our template, we'll add a new button with title, create an account, and on press, we'll have a function that calls navigation navigate to create account, which is our register screen. Let's open it, we'll add a state variable for name and another one for password confirmation. We'll then go to our template and duplicate the email field. We'll have label your name, value name. On change text, we'll call setName. We'll remove the keyboard type, and errors will now be errors.name. Let's do the same thing for the password confirmation. I'll duplicate the password field. We'll have label password confirmation, value password confirmation. On change text, we'll set password confirmation, and then errors will be errors.password_confirmation because Laravel expects and returns it in snake case. Finally, we'll turn handle login into handle register and login into register. I'll go ahead and rename the handle login function, and here is our registration form. Moving on, instead of calling the login function, we'll call a register function that also takes in the name and the password confirmation. Then, after we register, we should call navigate.replace home to replace our current register screen with the home screen. And of course, we need to accept the navigation prop. Next up, we need to implement this register function. I'll open up the AuthService and do export async function register, which will receive the register info, and inside it we'll do const data await axios post register with the register info. And then we'll do await setToken data.token. We do not have an API register endpoint, so we'll have to add it. I'll go to the Laravel API, open the register user controller, and copy the store function body. We'll then go to our API routes file, add a new route, post register, and hit paste. I'll import all the missing classes, add a device name to the request validation, which needs to be required. I'll remove the auth login function call, which authenticates the user using sessions, not tokens. And then down here, instead of returning no content, we'll return a JSON response with token set to user, create token, request device name, plain text token. So we are validating the request, creating the user, emitting the registered event in case we have some listener in place, and then creating and returning the auth token. Back to our mobile app, I'll refresh, hit create an account, enter the registration info, hit register now. The email has been already taken, so I'll add one here, hit register again, and there we go. We are registered and logged in. Our final feature will be the ability to ask for a password reset link. We'll duplicate the login screen and rename the copy to Forgot Password screen. I'll close these and open the app.js file, import the new screen, scroll down to our guest section, duplicate the register screen. We'll have name Forgot Password and component Forgot Password screen. Then we'll open up the login screen and add a new button with title Forgot Password, and on press we'll navigate to, you guessed it, Forgot Password. Let's open up the screen. We'll remove the AuthContext and password variable. Handle login will become handle forgot password. Instead of login, we'll call a send password reset link function that only takes in the email, and we no longer need to load and set the user. Then in our template, we'll remove the password field, the create an account button, and we'll rename login to email reset password, and on press we'll do handle forgot password. Of course, we need to implement this send password reset link. I'll adjust the import and remove the unused ones, and then we'll go to our AuthService. In here, we'll export a sync function send password reset link, which will receive the email, and then we'll do const data await axios post forgot password with the email, and then we'll console log the data. Just as before, we need to add this forgot password endpoint. So we'll go to our Laravel API, and we won't really need to do much here, because since we're using Breeze, we can just add a forgot password endpoint that calls the password reset link controller store action, which, if we open it, validates the email, sends the password reset link, and returns a JSON response with the status. So here in our auth service, we can just return data.status. Then we can go to our forgot password screen, add a reset status state variable, which will reset when we submit the form, but then we'll get the status returned by the send password link function and set it as our reset status. Let's go ahead and import the text component from React Native, go in our template, and check if we have a reset status, then show a text component with it. And let's also add a styles reset status. I'll copy it, go down to our styles, paste it in, and do margin bottom 10 and color green. And I think that's it. I'll remove the navigation prop since we're not using it. Refresh, go to forgot password, enter a valid email, and here's our success message. If we go to our Laravel API, since our email driver is set to log, we should see the email in our Laravel log file. And here it is. As you can see, the port is 5173, which points to my Vue SPA. I'll copy the link, go in the browser, paste it in, and we're seeing the reset password form, which we can use to set a new password. I'll go back to the mobile app, go to login, enter the new credentials, hit login, and there we go. And that was it. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it, share it, subscribe, click the bell button, all that good stuff.